Coach Neal Young, thank you so much for coming on the Christian Coach Podcast. It's an honor. We've talking before we start recording, and we have a few of your friends previously on the podcast. So you know the next question. What does it mean to you to be a Christian coach?
Yeah, I love that you start the podcast out that way, because I just think like different people say things different ways, and you just never know how something's going to resonate with somebody. So I love that you do that. But before I answer, I just want to say thanks for having me on. It's exciting to be on and have a conversation with you. I've listened to a few of the podcasts, and I just believe in how God can use stuff like this. And it's cool because once you do a podcast, like it's out there, and people can listen to it years later, and you just never know like what can happen. So thanks for having me on. But yeah, to answer that question, I knew you were going to ask it, and I was thinking about it. I was really trying to think about, man, what do I really think it means? And I think when I boil it down to the simplest form, I would just say that it means it's not about me. And it's which sounds simple, but man, it's just so hard. It's so hard to not make it about you. I think in any form of leadership or just as a human being. But it's not about me. It's about God, and it's about what he wants to do with me. And it's about how he wants to use whatever he's given me and to build his kingdom and not my own kingdom. And that's the daily struggle, I think, is, whose kingdom am I trying to build? Am I trying to build mine, or am I trying to build his? But to me, being a Christian coach means that I'm really trying to build his kingdom as opposed to mine. And it's not my favorite passage in the Bible, but it may be the one that I identify with the most. It's the passage in Romans 7, I think it is, where Paul's talking about like, I do what I don't want to do. I don't want to do what I want to do. And like when I talk to coaches all the time, it's like, man, it's hard.
Yeah.
It really is hard. But yeah, I think that's what I would say it means, is just to try to not make it about me.
Yeah, I think we all resonate with that one. It's just incredible, and then seeing somebody who was there around the time of Jesus still struggling with the same things,
Yeah. It gives me such comfort to read those words sometime when it's like, man, like, okay, like if Paul's saying it, like, so, okay, like,
I guess, if Paul is struggling with this, I think it's okay for us to struggle with it.
Then I guess, yeah, for sure.
Let's go back now, lots of years. How'd you get involved with sports? And then how did you come into a relationship with Christ?
Yeah, so I got involved in sports through my dad. So my dad was a great athlete. My dad played 4 sports in high school, was good at all of them, and then played a college sport that was different than any of the sports he played in high school. So he played football, basketball, track, played something else. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But then he played volleyball in college. And so my dad was just like, he's just like a, 6'2", strong athlete, just a stud. And so like he got me into sports from an early age because it was something that he loved, and it was a passion that I developed. And, I grew up in Indiana, so basketball, country. So loved basketball, obviously, but did everything. And it was honestly like, that was a great way that I connected with my dad. It was how I made friends. It was just, playing sports when you're little. Yeah. I mean, it was so much fun. And my dad was like, he was like the best youth coach. He just like understood the bigger picture, and he was really good with the kids, and he was super positive and encouraging. And it was never about winning. It was always about just like learning and fundamentals. And so it was just, I just fell in love with sports, and then, grew up going to Ball State basketball games. And so I'm like one of the few guys from Indiana. Like, I'm not an IU fan. Yeah. I'm not a Purdue fan. I'm not a Butler fan. I was a Ball State Cardinals basketball fan. That was my team. And I went to all their games, and those guys were like superheroes to me, and kind of fell in love with the environment of college sports, doing that. And then it just kind of took off from there. But as far as how I came to be a Christian, I would say, as much as my dad influenced me on kind of that side and really nurtured that passion of sports and activity, it was my mom and my grandmother that influenced me from a faith standpoint. I mean, my grandmother and my grandfather, but my grandmother like ran Vacation Bible School. You know what I mean? Like, she was like that lady. And my mom, obviously being her, it was my mom's mom. And, my mom ended up praying with me when I was really young. I asked her to pray with me so I could ask Jesus into my heart from an early age. I don't remember that necessarily, but I do remember just my mom constantly, like most moms with high school kids, as I got to high school, kind of drifted, cared way more about being cool than about following Jesus. And for whatever reason in my mind at that point, following Jesus wasn't cool. Which now I think it is cool. And so I'm thankful for that. But like my mom just never let me forget. And we're always in church. And even though I wasn't necessarily practicing those things, I mean, it was just, I was constantly being poured into, constant. And then, when I went off to college, there was kind of that moment where it was like, okay, mom's not going to come to at least I hope not. She's not going to come to my dorm and knock on the door. It's going to be a deal where I got to decide, like, am I serious about my faith?
Yeah.
And so when I got to college, it kind of.
And where'd you go to college?
I started off going to Ball State.
Okay.
For a year.
How
and
was
loved
that?
It.
How was that? Just going to your dream school?
It was great. I really enjoyed it. Made some great friends. It was the first time that I ever had a group of Christian friends. And so that was like incredibly transformational for me. Just seeing older guys that I looked up to that were upperclassmen in college. I was affiliated with Athletes in Action Ministry there, as well as Campus Crusade. I like to say that I was a women's basketball player at Ball State because I was one of those guys who practiced with the women's team, scout player. Which was a lot of fun, but just got to be surrounded by older Christian men that I looked up to. And I was like, man, so like, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like to like really live it out. And I was like, man, like I want that. And so it was a significant time it was a big year. And over the course of that year, I had this calling to be a coach since I was little. I mean, elementary school, I always I want to be a college basketball coach, but I kind of lost my way a little bit later years of high school, but then really came back strong that freshman year of college. And God was like, no, this is what I've got for you. And this isn't the place, even though I loved it at Ball State, I really did. And so I ended up transferring to Anderson University where I played, I was on the team. But that's where I really, God did a lot of stuff. And really, really just renewed my passion for getting into coaching.
Well, was there a single moment there at Ball State? Because Ball State, not a Christian school, right? Was there a moment there at Ball State that clicked back and it was like, hey, I need to start going back to my roots and remember what my grandma was teaching me?
So I know I think it was the first Sunday that I was there. I remember waking up, and I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it was the first Sunday. I woke up and it was like, oh, it's Sunday. If I want to go to church, I have to get out of I have to go to church. Like, it's kind of like all like on me, you know what I mean? To decide whether I want to take this thing seriously or not. And thankfully I had a great roommate who's still a friend. And we were both committed. We both just kind of made that commitment. Like, we want to be Christians. Like, that's what we want. We want to live it out. And it led to some really cool things that freshman year. We were certainly in the minority on our floor, but still built unbelievable relationships with guys, and guys we're still close with, and it led to some really cool conversations at times that first year.
That's really cool. And then you transfer to Anderson, you finish your college career, and then what's next after that?
Yeah, so I got married right after I graduated.
Did you meet her at Ball State or Anderson?
Anderson. Met her at Anderson. She was like an All-American runner at Anderson, and I'm like a bench warming basketball player. But I joked that like that's kind of when I knew I could coach in college, because it proved that I could recruit a little bit. But was fortunate. So we got married the summer after I graduated. She had graduated the year before. And then I was just trying to get a job. I did not have a plan B. I was an education major, but I knew I didn't want to go the high school route. Not that there's anything I was above it or there's anything against the high school route. I just knew that I was called to coach the college age group. So not level. It was more that age of young man that I was really drawn to. And just, I mean, honestly, just sent out a ton of emails, made a ton of phone calls. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really have like coaching mentors per se in terms of like from the career side. Obviously, my high school coach was really influential in terms of helping me develop a coaching style and philosophy, but I didn't know how to get a coaching job. I had no idea. So I just reached out to everybody I could think of. And I heard back from 3 people. And I love telling this story because it's a really cool story. So I heard back from the head coach at Goshen College, where I ended up working, the head coach at Defiance College, which is a D3 school. Goshen was an NAI school. And then Matt Painter at the University of Purdue. And I emailed hundreds of coaches. I mean, it was absurd. And Matt Painter literally called me at like 11 p.m. one night. And he was just like, hey, I got your voicemail. I just want to call. I don't have anything, but like, just here's some encouragement. Here's some advice. And I just remember thinking like, whoa, like, why is Matt Painter calling me back? Like that, like it just always, I'll never forget that. And he just encouraged me, say, hey, this is kind of what maybe some things you should think about, some things you should expect as you're kind of getting started. And that was that. And I never forgot that. It was just an unbelievably kind gesture. He probably doesn't even remember, but it was really cool. But ended up getting an assistant coaching job at Goshen College. Right out of college, I was making $4,000 a year, and I thought it was the greatest thing in the world.
What did your wife think of that?
Yeah, she was teaching. It was honestly like that first year was kind of tough because it was the first time that I had really it's the first time that I'd really went after something. You know what I mean? Like one of my big regrets, and this is kind of going off the rails a little bit, but one of my big regrets in life was just kind of floating through life and never really pursuing anything of value other than, in my, college years, my faith, some, but like in high school, just kind of never really pursued anything, never really worked hard at anything, just kind of floated. So it's the first, I was doing something that I really loved and cared about. And so I pursued it. And I think in a lot of ways, I kind of became like a workaholic and neglected a lot of things that I'd never neglected before, just because I never really worked hard at anything before. And so, that first year it was a great year of marriage, but it was also difficult just in that, we had to deal with that. Because I didn't, like every workaholic, I didn't consider myself a workaholic, but we had to work through that. And I'm thankful that she brought that to my attention. And it's still, obviously, as you know, it can be a struggle in coaching, just because it's one of those professions where it's less a job and more like a lifestyle that you choose. But it's, that was a wake up call, and just that how quick it can happen. So I was really thankful for that.
And it goes usually because we really like what we're doing too.
Right. Yeah. Good things can become idols. And I learned that very quickly when I got into coaching.
And then how'd you end up now at Covenant?
Yeah. So I was an assistant at Goshen for 3 years. Then I went to Lewis University right outside Chicago and was a graduate assistant. And then right as I finished being a graduate assistant at Lewis, I was 28, and my boss at Goshen, the head coach, Gary Chuff, who I'd worked for, he got out of coaching and got into administration. So he was a high school athletic director, and the AD that I was with was still there, and we had a really good relationship. And so it was the perfect storm of me and the AD were good friends. My former boss had done what he could for me, and nobody really wanted it. And so I was able to get it. And so it was kind of that perfect storm, and was there for 4 years. And then after my 4th year, Tim Sedgel, the AD at Covenant, who's my current AD, reached out, and we hit it off and ended up coming down to Covenant.
That's cool. So most people might not know, but you're the Bo Jackson of coaches. Like I said before we recorded, you're a multi-sport coach. And so you also coach the men's basketball team, and then you also coach the golf team. How does that happen?
So I would push back strongly on the Bo Jackson analogy. But I do coach two sports. Yeah, it actually was unexpected. It wasn't something. I'm not a golfer. I'm learning and I'm trying to get better because as a college golf coach, like you can't be terrible. You're not allowed to be terrible. Like you don't have to be good,
Yeah.
but you can't be terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get to where I'm not terrible. Got my work cut out for me.
Did you
still.
play golf
But
growing up?
I mean, I hacked it around like,
Okay.
but I didn't like play golf.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a steep learning curve. But what I've realized is like, these guys are college athletes, just like my basketball players are. They play a different sport, but there's so many similarities. But especially like in the mental aspect, just the obviously in terms of like discipline and just like when it comes to discipleship and culture building, it's like it doesn't really matter what sport you coach. Like these young athletes need to be discipled and they need to be part of a strong culture. And the fundamentals of doing those things, I think, cross all sport boundaries. And so it's fun. I'm learning a lot. I never expected to be a golf coach, but it's like a fun kind of invigorating challenge to take on and really try to learn the culture of a different sport, and how to relate to those athletes and how to teach and how to try to ultimately set those guys up for success.
Yeah. Do you sometimes mix up your recruits and you're calling somebody and you're like, man, I can't wait to watch that approach shot, and it's like, what approach shot, coach? I like dunking.
There's a 100% chance that will happen at some point. It has not yet, but it's going to happen at some point for sure. I mean, I've been at Covenant now for 4 years. I'm going into my 5th year, and I still sometimes will say, "Hey, it's Coach Young from Goshen."
Oh,
And so, like, yeah, it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. You now have this temptation of chasing wins, in two sports. I struggle with it just one sport, but now you have two sports to worry about that. But how can coaches really focus on discipleship instead of just chase wins and chase after, earthly prizes?
Man,
Because we have to
such
win in order to keep
yeah.
our jobs as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a great question, because winning is, again, it's one of those things. Like, it's not bad to want to win. It's not bad to try to be really good at your sport. It's not bad. Like, those aren't bad things. Winning, I found, is just, it's one of those things that it's so like it just tempts you, because it looks like the solution to every problem in your life, right? So it's not even like, as a coach, like when you think of winning, you don't even think about it as just winning. You think about it, and at least I do sometimes, as like the solution to everything. Well, if we just won, well, I would be a better dad.
It's the best
You know what I mean?
deodorant.
Or like, yeah, it's just like this. It's this thing, but the reality is, it's not. It's not the solution to everything, but it feels like that sometimes. And it's I think that, and I don't, obviously can't speak for all Christian coaches, but certainly to a lot of the guys I talk to, and certainly for myself, like that's the big struggle,
Yep.
right? So it's like I talked earlier about, like, it's not about me. Well, I think the primary way I make it about me is by chasing wins, so that I look like I know what I'm doing and I look like I'm a good coach. And so much of it just comes from insecurity, I think. I think I learned that, I think it was a couple years ago, maybe, just like God really showed me just like how insecure I was and how much I was coaching from a place of insecurity, trying to prove my worth and value through a win total. Which, looking back, it's like, man, like, it's crazy, but it happens so easy, just because I think culture has gravity, and we talk about this in our team a lot. And what I mean by that is, like, if you think about like actual gravity, like it's pulling on us right now, but we never think about it.
Yeah.
But it's maybe, that's culture. Like, it's just always tugging at you and pulling you, and you can get caught up in defining success according to the way the world does, and defining your own worth and value according to how the world does it. And that's all it takes, is you shift that focus. And for me, at least, when my focus shifts from discipling my guys and loving my guys to winning, I become a different human being, and it's quick, and it happens quick. And so how coaches can avoid that, and it's simple. but simple doesn't mean easy. You know, I think surrounding yourself with like-minded coaches is a huge thing for me. I mean, you had Jeff Clark on this podcast, and Jeff is like my brother, and we talk multiple times a week. And I have other coaches that I talk to, just the kind of guy that like, they just always bring you back, and they can call you out on, oh, hey, that doesn't sound, you know, whatever.
And Jeff has a lot of wins.
He does have a lot of wins. And it's like, that's a great example too, right? Like they've won more in college basketball than any program at any level in the last decade. But it's still like, they still have these struggles. And so it's like, man, like at some point, I think you got to be willing to learn from other people too. And it's, as opposed to like, oh, well, I'm going to try to get to that level and I'm going to kill myself doing it just to realize what they were trying to tell you all along. Yeah. But so those relationships are key. And then just that, man, it's that private time just with you and God in the word, in prayer. It's so simple, right? It sounds so simple, but it goes back to that Romans 7 passage. Like when I'm doing that, it's not that like we win all our games or I don't have any problems, but you're just in a different place. Like when you're surrendering your day to God every morning and you're getting filled up from his word, and your leadership is a result of kind of that overflow, and you're not forcing things. You're kind of operating in your sweet spot in terms of, you know, he's bearing fruit in you, and that's manifesting itself for his glory and the good of other people. It's just like, it's hard to explain, but it's just different, right? But then it goes back to, well, why don't I do that all the time? You know, like, why don't I do that all the time? It's, you know, obviously we're simple, but it's just like just that time. It's, man, when I'm getting in the word, I'm just a different person. Yeah. I'm just a different person. That's been key for me.
That's true. That's true. Well, Coach Young, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been great. Love hearing your story and your journey now to Covenant. Thank you for sharing it. And we like to end. How can we be praying for you?
Yeah. I think I'm getting a little older. So I used to be referred to as a young coach. Now I'm just referred to as a coach. And the older I get, the more I realize just like what's at stake if I miss it. You know what I mean? And I'm talking not just coaching, but like being a husband, being a dad. Like, you know, I don't just kind of have this desire. It's like, man, I don't want to miss the mark. I want to be and live and lead the way God has called me to do it. So just for wisdom in that, and just that I would continue to literally just keep it simple and stay rooted in his word in that time in the morning, and that I would let my leadership be a result of that.
Sounds good. All right, let's pray. Dear Jesus, thank you. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for Coach Young and his leadership at Covenant with two sports, the basketball and golf. Lord, I pray that you give him wisdom, Lord, that also that he will seek you for wisdom on a daily basis, Lord, so that he may not lean on his own understanding, Father, but that he'll trust in you, and that he'll put all his focus on you. Because we know when we try it ourselves, we fail it, Lord, and we need to just trust in you. Lord, help him with transitioning, you know, as from a young coach and now just a coach, Lord, that you will not miss the point, that he'll be able to lead his family, his kids, his wife, and his teams well. Lord, that you know, people will be impacted by the way he lives his life, and that he'll be a great role model to anyone he comes in contact with. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
My last question is, you coach two sports, therefore you have to have some productivity hacks in order to stay on top of your game. Can you share some of those with us?
Yeah, that's a great, like, super practical question. Productivity hacks that I have. So I actually I'll show it to you. I've got this like day planner, and I just printed out a bunch of these pages. It's called the Story Brand Productivity Schedule.
Oh yeah.
And you can download
Donald
it
Miller.
online. Yeah, Donald Miller. And so I made my own. It really resonated with
Nice.
me. And so I just printed out a bunch and I use that. That kind of helps me keep the things that are the most important at the forefront of my mind, which I've always found is a huge, huge help for me. Delegation is one of my passions. So like
I
I've got
love,
two really good
and that's one of
assistants.
the things that I've come to love recently is delegating. It's it's actually you empower other people, but you also empower yourself to work on things that truly matter. Not that the other things don't
Yeah.
really matter, but it's like your power zone of work, you know?
Yeah, I've got great people around me. Josh Brown is my full-time assistant. Jacob Hooker is my graduate assistant. They just demolish stuff when I give it to them in a good way. They're really, really good.
Yeah.
They work really hard. And then just people, just there's a lot of people at Covenant like
Yeah.
that. And so yeah, delegating is big. And I heard of Andy Stanley said something on a podcast, and this was like 10 years ago, that has always resonated with me. He talked about how, like, if you're in charge of an organization, I'm not in charge of Covenant College, but our basketball program, he said, you want to try to figure out a way to spend most of your time doing the things that only you can do. So there are a lot of things, but there's a certain set of things that only the leader can do. And that's always really resonated with me. So I've always tried to delegate things that other people could do. And I found that, people actually enjoy being given a lot of things like that. They get to work on their skill set and develop other areas of leadership. And so I found it's been a really good way to actually develop assistant coaches. That's been a really positive thing. And then honestly, like, the biggest thing is like going to bed like at a decent time. Like I don't care. Like for me, it's like if I'm not asleep by like 10:30, I'm not going to be that productive the next day. So like being able to just say like, no, I'm not going to grind till whatever time. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to hang out with my family. I'm going to go to bed so that then I can get up a little earlier, because I'm just way more productive in the morning than I am at night. So just like literally just like something as simple as going to bed on time has been huge for me.
Me too. I'm in bed by, actually that sounds really terrible, but I'm in bed by 8:00. and
That's
and
like
then,
a dream.
And then I read, and well, the thing is, my kids go to bed at 7:30, 8:00. I have young kids; they're 3 and 1 right now, but they go to bed at 7:30, 8:00, but they wake up at 4:30, 5:00 in the morning. So if I want to have any me time, I have to wake up earlier than that. And for me to wake up earlier than that, I have to be in bed by 8:00.
Yeah, it's tough. Kids will help you get disciplined on your sleep schedule real quick.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Well, Coach, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Coach. It was great to talk to you.